Good evening, John. John, can you hear me?
Yeah, good evening. How are you?
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you for joining us. As
Yeah,
usual, always before time.
I see 203 people. This is amazing.
Yes, people, some more are yet to join, John. They are joining.
Good. Well, it's a testament to
Thank you, John.
your work there.
Hi, ma'am. Ching, ma'am. Hi, good evening. Sorry, John.
I'm going to step out for a cup of coffee and I'll be right back.
Yes, John. Yes, please.
Is my audio fine? Good evening. Hello, everyone.
Hi,
Good
Ding.
evening. Good evening from my end.
Thank you, Ding. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening. Start பண்ணல. Okay, 5 minutes மேல ஆயிடுச்சு. எல்லாம் வெளிநாட்டு ஆட்களாச்சு. Yeah.
Good evening, everybody. A very good evening to everybody present here. It is my pleasure to invite you all for this international webinar on Awareness Towards Peace Education on behalf of the Department of Advanced Zoology and Biotechnology, Women's Christian College, Chennai. I would like to extend a warm welcome to all of the participants and the dignitaries and speakers for today. Many of you have joined us from around the world. Today, I hope you all learn a lot about peace and you find all the sessions enlightening and encouraging. I would like to begin the session by invoking the blessings of God. I invite Shofar, our student gospel band, to begin with a worship song.
Can we just have a prayer and begin? Dr. Vanita?
Yes, ma'am, sure.
Yeah.
Shall we look to God in prayer? Heavenly Father, we thank and praise you, Master, for this time of prayer that you have given us. Thank you, Lord, for enabling us to organize this international webinar on awareness towards peace education. I surrender this entire program into your hands. May it be a wonderful learning experience for all the participants. I pray for your leading and guidance and protection. I surrender this entire webinar into your mighty hands, Lord. In Jesus' precious name, I pray. Amen.
Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am, for your prayer. I now request our principal, Dr. Lillian I. Jasper, who has been a pillar of support for us and who's extended her unwavering support and encouragement to us, to greet the gathering.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to meet you all online. And I'm very happy that the Department of Zoology has taken this initiative, especially under the leadership of Dr. Vanita, to organize this webinar on peace at a time when the whole world is talking about peace and how we need to move towards peace. So it is not just the Ukraine war that I'm talking about, but even in our own context, we need it a lot more than before. I think after COVID, people have all started coming back to normalcy, but one thing that is missing is peace and talk about having a good relationship. Even on campus, I see that sometimes students are not able to perceive things beyond themselves. Probably it's because of the fact that we have all lived in our closed circles for a long time. And when we talk to each other, when we mingle with each other, we need to talk more about tolerance. We need to talk about peace. We need to talk about how to make things work. So in this context, I think this is a very meaningful endeavor, and to get that inner peace, which will help us to radiate that peace to the people around us. That is something which we need to sort of discuss and talk. And without much ado, I'd like to wish you all the very best for a pleasant evening. So thank you very much. I'd also like to congratulate Dr. Julia on completing this course and on being bold enough to take it up on campus when she had a lot of other responsibilities too. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much for your encouraging words. I now request our head of the department, Dr. Vanita Williams, head Department of Advanced Zoology and Biotechnology, Women's Christian College, to deliver the welcome address.
Thank you, Dr. Evangeline. Good evening and a very warm welcome to each one of you on this online platform to participate in the international webinar on awareness towards peace education, organized by the Department of Advanced Zoology and Biotechnology, Women's Christian College. Now, most of us are familiar with the prayer of Saint Francis of Assisi. Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. And where there is sadness, joy. Saint Francis was called by God to rebuild broken churches that were deteriorating, very much like the people whose lives were also revolving around violence, aggression, and retaliation. Francis formed a group called Little Brothers who would go around and show people how to live a simple life and yet enjoy it. They helped people make peace with each other. Forgiveness helped them to move from anger and bitterness to peace, love, and unity. They soon became compassionate and caring. Peace education involves teaching about peace for peace. It aims to help students acquire skills for non-violent conflict resolution and to reinforce these skills for active and responsible action in the society for the promotion of the values of peace. This way, individuals and the society can have a peaceful existence on the basis of non-violence, tolerance, and equality, and learn to respect differences. In this international webinar, we have eminent speakers from leading institutions involved in peace building and peace studies, both in India and in Philippines. Wishing each one of the participants a fruitful learning experience through this international webinar on awareness towards peace education. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for the meaningful words. I now request Dr. Vanita Golda, Assistant Professor, Department of Advanced Zoology and Biotechnology, to introduce Dr. Christine Bertucci.
Thank you, Dr. Evangeline. Good evening, one and all. Greetings from the Department of Advanced Zoology and Biotechnology. Today, more than ever, we see dark clouds of war surrounding nations and people suffering as a result. The need of the hour is to develop the young generation with peace consciousness and awareness on the importance of conflict resolution. We are privileged to have with us Dr. Christine Bertucci, Director, Mindanao Peace Building Institute Foundation, Philippines. Ms. Christine Bertucci graduated from the University of San Francisco in the US with a Bachelor of Arts in Sociology and a Doctor of Jurisprudence in Law. She practiced law at a legal aid society, where she was the head of the family law unit representing poor and abused women who were seeking a new life. In 1978, she left for Hong Kong, where she served as the co-director of the Asia Monitor Resource Center, which is still operating. Peace comes at a price, often only at the end of a hard-fought battle. Ms. Christine had her share of battles to fight too. While in Hong Kong, she joined the Kwang Tung Inquiry Service, KTIS, a Chinese voluntary organization where she was one of the 3 foreigners working with about 25 Chinese students and teachers who were all activists. She was involved with the KTIS colleagues in demonstrations, sit-ins, and other protests on behalf of marginalized population in Hong Kong. This was one of the milestones in her life where she engaged in social justice activities with her Chinese friends and deepened her love and appreciation for Asian societies and cultures. It was here in Hong Kong where Christine's commitment to the Philippines started. She volunteered with the Resource Center for Philippines Concerns, RCPC, established in Hong Kong in the mid-1970s as an international solidarity center on behalf of human rights in the Philippines. This engagement brought her to Diversity in 1984, where she worked as an international volunteer with non-governmental organizations. She co-founded the Philippine International Forum, a network that supported international solidarity on behalf of the poor and the oppressed in the Philippines. Christine also served with Mennonite Central Committee as its country representative in the Philippines for 6 years. In 2002, Christine left for Timor-Leste to serve with the Commission for Reception, Truth and Reconciliation in East Timor as its donor liaison and with Timorese organizations in a capacity building role. This started a long-term relationship with a Timorese colleague with whom she and others have supported community development projects in the mountainous region of Bacau sub-district. And to this day, Christine is still supporting a middle school and a secondary school in the mountains of Bacau sub-district. In 2009, Christine returned to Diversity to lead the institutionalization of the Mindanao Peace Building Institute, which she co-founded with Filipino colleagues in 2000, and where she is currently the director. Christine is a seasoned, detail-oriented, and highly committed mentor, manager, and administrator, offering 40 years of experience in international development work in areas of peace building, human rights advocacy, popular education, and community development in various countries of Asia. She is an adopted daughter of Asia. We are truly honored to have Ms. Christine here with us to offer her inaugural address. I now invite Ms. Christine to deliver the inaugural address. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, good afternoon and good evening, distinguished guests, professors, teachers, colleagues, and friends. All of you peace builders. It is wonderful to be here with all of you at this international webinar on the awareness towards peace education. I have been asked to highlight the importance of peace education and how it has become the need of the hour in today's world. It is so urgent for us to be here this evening and to engage in this discussion as we face the realities of our world. The war in Ukraine, the daily bombings, destruction, and death seen before our very eyes, sometimes minutes after explosions and missile strikes, and then there is fire, smoke, and rubble, coupled with the defiance, strength, and resilience of a people who will not be occupied and become a puppet of an invading force. Myanmar, in our region, the ongoing bombings, burnings, raping of its people by a brutal regime that says it will annihilate the enemy, who are the majority of its own people, who are standing up and courageously risking death, torture, detention, and rape to live freely and justly where they will decide the future of their own country. Or in Hong Kong, where this week, UK judges sitting on Hong Kong's highest court voluntarily resigned since they could not continue to sit on the court in the face of the imposition of the national security law that has curtailed the exercise of civil rights of its population. Or in Afghanistan, under Taliban rule, girls cannot go to school. The ban on education of girls has continued, resulting in sanctions against the country that have gravely affected the entire population. And in the Philippines, where I am living, where the son of a dictator and the daughter of a president who has waged a relentless war on drugs, killing thousands of mainly poor people, are campaigning for public office. Or in the United States, where I am originally from, a former president who has lied, distorted truth, maligned his opponents, rallied the forces of hate and extremism, practiced nepotism and cronyism, may run for president with the support of many. I could go on, a litany of sorrows, tears, suffering, and injustices. But this is our context. This is our reality, which is daunting and which has the power to drain our energies, causing paralysis, powerlessness, and impotence. At a personal level, for MPI, the Mindanao Peace Building Institute, where I work, this is no longer just news, but it has touched us personally, with some of our alumni fleeing this violence and seeking places of safety and beginning new lives in foreign lands, and even some being arrested for working for justice and peace and genuine development. This is what we are facing as peace builders. And here is where teaching about peace education, developing curriculum on peace education for schools, colleges, and universities, establishing peace centers and peace clubs on campuses, conducting peace camps for students, and doing what I believe many of you are already doing is so urgent and so important and needs to be continued and multiplied. To me, peace education is one response to the litany that I have just presented to you of what is happening not only in our region, but in our world, where there is so much suffering, death, and destruction. We must continue to teach children, teenagers, young adults, as well as older people, the values inherent in peace education curricula, the values of respect for human beings and for all forms of life, dignity, acceptance of diversity, the importance of dialogue, active listening, nonviolent conflict resolution, understanding, forgiveness, and reconciliation. This task is so urgent and so needed, since it sometimes seems the forces of bigotry, demonization of the other, polarization, divisiveness, and hatred get the upper hand. But we must not be defeated. And this can only happen when we act strategically and intentionally and in collaboration with others in our peace education work. As the Bible says, we must be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. We must have a well thought out plan with clear objectives so that we will have direction and guidance and a way to evaluate whether we are achieving our goals and maximizing our talents, our skills, our energy, and our time together. These are very precious elements, and we must preserve them and maximize them to the greatest part that we can so that we can achieve our goals. It is so important that we engage in our peace education work in collaboration with others. I stress collaboration as a very important of what I believe peace education is about. We cannot do this work alone. It is too immense, and it will only sap our energy and enthusiasm if we work alone. We will burn out and maybe even just give up. We need strong and enduring relationships to sustain us on our peace building journey. And we must nurture these relationships with other peace builders who will keep us on track and challenge us when we fall off the track, and who will hold us up when we fall down and want to give up because we are depressed and demoralized and feel that the world will never change and goodness, kindness, mercy, and forgiveness will never prevail. We must say no. We must say no, that this is not true, and firmly believe that the forces of good, and to me, that are the forces that are before all of us now. It is us collectively working in peace education for these goals. So the forces of good will prevail only if we stay together, unified in our commitment for justice and peace, sustaining each other in our peace education work. And in conclusion, I truly believe that we need these opportunities, such as this webinar on peace education, that gather us together for reflection, sharing, and learning, that fortify us and feed our inner resources so that we have the strength and willpower to continue our peace building journey until our last breath. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Dr. Vertusli, for helping us understand why peace education has become indispensable now in today's world of violence and all the pitfalls that we might encounter on this journey towards peace. Thank you so much for enlightening us. It's been a pleasure listening to you. Thank you, ma'am. I now request Dr. Annie Rubens, Assistant Professor, Department of Advanced Zoology and Biotechnology, to introduce Dr. Angela Wong.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the speaker, Dr. Angela Y Ching, who holds the position of President for Programs at the United Board for Christian Higher Education in Asia. Dr. Y Ching lives in Hong Kong and has received a doctorate from the University of Chicago. She was a long-time faculty member of the Chinese University of Hong Kong, serving the Department of Cultural and Religious Studies, and has headed the Graduate Division of Cultural Studies and Gender Studies, the Gender Research Center, and many academic programs. Ecumenically committed, she has held high-ranking positions in various organizations, and to name a few, she was a member of the Board of Trustees of the United Board from 2002 to 2012 and the Presidium of Christian Conference of Asia from 2000 to 2005. As an academic, she has published articles both in Chinese and English languages on topics related to religion, gender, and culture in Asia. Ma'am, on behalf of Women's Christian College and the Department of Advanced Zoology and Biotechnology, I welcome you to deliver the keynote address. Over to you, ma'am.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Can you hear me?
yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
Okay, the host does not allow me to turn on my video. I cannot start my video. Do you want me just to speak? Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you, ma'am.
Oh, okay, so shall I just go on and speak? I cannot turn on my video.
Yes, ma'am, please start.
Okay, so I'll just speak, right? Okay, no problem. Hello, Principal Lillian, Jasper, colleagues and friends of Women's Christian College, and all the peace builders of MPI.
Sorry to disturb you, ma'am.
Yes,
Ma'am, you can unmute now.
I unmute, but I cannot turn on my video.
Oh, okay. Yes, ma'am. Yeah, you can turn on your video now, ma'am.
Okay. All right, yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Now it works. All right. Oh, I'm sorry. I lost my text. Okay, hold on. Just a minute. Okay, I'll start again. I just greet Principal Lillian, Jasper, and all the colleagues of Women's Christian College, and also all the peace builders of MPI. Some of you I met, and Christine, who just spoke. A lot of admiration for all the commitment you made. So I can continue? You can hear me, right?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you. Please continue.
Okay. So warm greetings from the United Board and Hong Kong, and thanks to Principal Lilian and Dr. Judy for inviting me. It's an honor for me to be a part of this inaugural event for the Peace Education Initiatives at the Women's Christian College. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called the children of God. This is an important teaching of the Beatitudes in the Gospel of Matthew. It does not only remind us of the need of the time, but also stands as a religious and human pursuit through the ages. More than ever, we are discovering differences, oppositions, conflicts, and tensions within our communities and between nations far and near. Just as Christine just said, at this very moment, hundreds of people are dying every day in Ukraine, many more in places like Afghanistan, Yemen, Myanmar, or even closer, the northeast of India. For the latter, especially, the news has very few reports. And remember that violence and hate messages are happening daily on the internet and social media world for our young people. Many of them feel suffocated and become suicidal. I'm sure all of us have learned about the importance of peace since we were young. We often greet one another with shalom in the church and wish everyone for peace during major festivals like the New Year. It is easy to greet one another with peace in all sincerity, but it is always hard to keep the peace even within our families or neighboring communities. We may learn and talk about peace in the church or the classrooms, but the most important transformation would only occur when we process it internally and embody it in our personal lives. However, the irony is, we know that we need peace, but we spend a lot of our time destroying it. And sometimes we destroy the very little peace we try to build ourselves. So what does it take to really deserve to be called the children of God? One of the clues, I believe, is how to face differences. The more people interact nationally and globally, the more we find differences among people. The more we get to know people's cultures, beliefs, and ideologies, the more we feel threatened by the fragility of one's unique identity or our comfort zone. Prejudice, resentment, hostility, exclusivity, and self-closure would easily be generated for self-protection. How many times did you feel betrayed by showing your vulnerability to someone you thought you could trust? And how many times do you try winning over an argument to prove that you are more right than the others? We tend to distinguish ourselves from one another rather than share the same characteristic or qualities. We tend to establish our values by differentiation rather than commonalities. More than ever, peace requires building confidence in ourselves in order to accept a different other, based not on familiarity, but on tolerance and mutual respect. That's the only way to fight a spreading virus of war, conflict, extremism, violence, hatred, and terrorism. If peace is a universal aspiration, how can we transcend the differences in gender, religion, class, race, ethnicity, and caste to arrive at some shared values? How can we nurture a culture of peace that knows no boundaries and is inherent in the hearts of all people? In a speech made by the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, he reminded us that peace cannot be decreed solely through treaties. It must be nurtured through the dignity, rights, and capacities of every man and woman. Fundamentally, it is about a way of being, interacting with others, and cohabitating on this planet together. It means that the war of conflicts is not simply outside, it is also inside, in our communities of faith, in people with the same political convictions even, and most importantly, inside us. Tending to people's tendency to divide rather than unite. Can we remember always to ask ourselves a few questions in times of anger and hatred and breaking relationship, at the edge of breaking relationships? Can we ask the questions about others? Why do we reject or refuse to accept an other's identity, whether it is religious, ethnic, gender, or caste? Why do I question the relationship with the people I conflict with? Am I building or destroying trust? How can we recognize and acknowledge the presence and efforts of another? Do they contribute to the same cause even we do not agree? Questions about ourselves. Why has it been so hard to practice fairness or inclusivity? What happened the last time I did it? Can I overcome the challenges? Why can't I accept my vulnerability and make mistakes into opportunities? Have I listened well? Why does it make sense of the other? Why does it make sense to the others? What are the underlying emotions and meaning in the conversation? How can I better understand? I remember I shared the principle of dignity leadership with colleagues at the Women's Christian College. And I think we can also do a dignity check. An experienced conflict negotiator says that the violation of dignity is at the heart of all conflicts. To be a dignity leader, we must ask, do I help people find their purpose or meaning? Have I empowered or disempowered people I get to know and work with? Do I make people feel worthy? A Confucian teacher, Mencius, set up a test for one to pass as a human being. He proposed that if one sees a child about to fall into the well, he or she will generate empathy and seek to rescue the child, regardless of whose child it is. Empathy, or the connectedness between one and other, qualifies one as a human being. If we can always feel for another, irrespective of their cultural, religious, racial, or ethnic and caste background, can we not enjoy better peace? Living with and cultivating peace is not only a faith demand, but the essence of being a responsible human being. The United Board has adopted peace education as one of its program thrusts for a long time. Our focus has always been interreligious understanding. Despite our missionary origin, the United Board is fully aware of the Asian context in which our Christian colleges and universities work. Building a peaceful society requires us to venture into communities of different faith traditions. In India, I understand that Christianity is a minority and that most students come from non-Christian backgrounds. This has offered us a challenge, but at the same time, a grave opportunity to demonstrate what whole person education is about. Rather than propagating one tradition, one faith, or culture as superior over the others, we call for understanding and working across religious boundaries, nurturing and caring for students of other faith traditions. Chris just reminded us how important collaboration is. I have seen wonderful examples in some of the Christian universities I visited. A university chapel decorated with indigenous cultures and images of ethnic people of other religion, and the creation of a Salat's prayer room in a Japanese Christian university for international students from Muslim countries. These are important gestures of extending hospitality to people as people, beyond the religious boundaries. welcoming people of different backgrounds into our community with due respect is a defining first step to building peace in our midst. To conclude, I must congratulate Lillian, Julia, and your colleagues for taking on peace education as your mission. God promises that if two of us on earth agree about anything we ask for, it will be granted. So let's say the prayer of St. Francis again, to ask God to make us an instrument of God's peace. Where there is hatred, let us sow love. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. For it's in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen. And thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Angela. That was a very interesting perspective on peace education. Thank you for highlighting the importance of respecting differences, inculcating and developing tolerance and mutual respect in these turbulent times. Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
I now request Dr. Julia Harriet, the facilitator of this international webinar and Assistant Professor, Department of Advanced Zoology and Biotechnology, to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Dr. Eva. First and foremost, I thank God. Without his help, without his guidance, we wouldn't have been able to put all this as one piece and have it as an international webinar. So I thank God because I saw the hand of God in each and every step of my planning. And when we give first preference to God, I'm sure, God sets everything in order for us. The second person I would like to thank is our dear principal, because when I told her all this, she was very, very supportive. She was very supportive, and she said, yes, do it. It's a need of the hour. It's good that your department has all joined to do this topic of prime importance now. So I thank our dear principal, who's always very supportive when faculty, want to do something towards academic excellence. And also, I would like to thank the retired faculty members of our department who have joined. We thank you, ma'am, for joining with us today. A special word of thanks to the UB team because watching ma'am was in our MPI training program. So when I was planning as to who do I call and things like that, so I asked ma'am, will you be able to first greet? She said yes. Then it struck me like, why should I ask her to greet? Why can't I ask her to deliver the keynote address? And amidst her busy schedule, she was so gracious enough to agree. And she delivered a very, very good keynote address. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. UB has always been supportive. So we pray and hope that this fellowship will continue in the years to come. A special word of thanks to Dr. Christine Vertucci. She's the director of MPI. Actually, our Peace for Asia, this program, this package, had two phases. The first one was the course conducted by Global Ethics Net Academy. The second one was by Medano Peace Institute, of which Dr. Christine is the director. So I also requested ma'am, and she was also very gracious enough. She said, yes, I will surely come. I'm happy. I accept the invitation. So it shows that, people, stalwarts like this, when they join with the academic community, we can do great things for the betterment of the society. So thank you, ma'am. Thank you, Christine, ma'am. I thank all the faculty of Shift 1 and 2 and students of Shift 1 and 2. I know it's a busy day. It's a busy week. We have our sports happening next week, practice, and so many things. But we thank all the students and staff members who took time to register and who have joined today. Thank you so much. I should mention Dr. Shobha Leslie, the IQAC coordinator. So when I told ma'am about our program, she immediately scheduled the Zoom meeting, did everything technically whatever possible has to be done. So we thank Dr. Shobha Leslie, ma'am. I also thank Ms. Shiba, principal's office, because all the technical, in terms of correspondence, mail, all that, Shiba ma'am was very helpful to us. So I thank Shiba ma'am. I also would like to thank Mr. Vibin, who helped us, this recording, live streaming, and all these technical support. So I thank Vibin. I would be failing in my duty if I don't thank Miss Anu Kritika. She's a third year BCA student. She was helping us in all this pre-webinar, all this making of the registration forms, invites, all technical, whatever we had to sort out. She was there. So I thank Miss Anu. And I wouldn't say last, I would like to thank God for my department. I would like to mention each and every one of them, starting from the head, Dr. Vanita Williams, ma'am, Dr. Annie Rubens, Dr. Benita, Dr. Jansi Merlin, Dr. Eva, Dr. Vinoda, and Dr. Christina. Because when we started planning, each one pitched in. They said, I will do this, I will do this. It was, it was a joint effort. So I thank God for my department. And last of all, I thank God for my shofar team. I'm sorry, they had recorded a song, but there was some technical glitches, so we were not able to play. Probably we will play that song sometime today if we have time, or tomorrow during the validity session. So I thank my shofar team. So we like to thank each and every one of you, and we pray that you will have a fruitful experience. You will have a very good takeaway from this today's international webinar, and you would do something, as the keynote speaker and the inaugural address speaker said, be instruments of peace and do something to build God's kingdom. So I thank one and all. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Julia. I would once again like to thank all of you for being part of this inaugural session. And thank you very much. And we hope that all of you learn a lot from the coming sessions and from all the lectures that we have lined up for you, and that you find each of those sessions enlightening, encouraging, and engaging. And I hope that you are able to take away something that will eventually help you change your perspective on how we approach peace. Thank you very much. We will now move on to the first session of this international webinar. And I would like to request our head of the department, Dr. Williams.
Good evening, everyone. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Mr. Jonathan Rudy, Senior Consultant, Peace Building Global, Mundano Peace Building Institute, Philippines. Jonathan Rudy, fondly called John, is a global educator on the topics of human security, peace building, conflict transformation, and non-violence. With more than 35 years of work in 30 countries in Asia and Africa, John's recent training energies have gone towards human security and civil society. John is a graduate of Eastern Mennonite Seminary and University in the United States with a certificate in conflict transformation. He has earned a teaching for higher education certificate from Temple University. He has served as a facilitator at the Mundano Peace Building Institute, Philippines, for over 2 decades and teaches regularly at the University of Hargeisa, Somaliland. John served as a peacemaker in residence at Elizabethtown College's Center for Global Understanding and Peacemaking from 2012 to 2019. He was a senior fellow for human security at the Alliance for Peace Building and a senior fellow at the Social Enterprise Service Group as a subject expert in peace building. He is a Fulbright specialist, having supported the Peace Studies program at the Symbiosis School for Liberal Arts in Pune, India, and is on the roster of UNDP Express pre-approved consultants in conflict resolution and peace building. John is a core member of the Global Partners for the Prevention of Armed Conflict Improving Practices Working Group. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, John has facilitated Zoom-based peace and justice trainings. Before the global shutdown, he facilitated workshops at the Initiatives of Change, Coup Forum, Just Governance for Human Security in Switzerland. With this introduction, I now invite Jonathan Rudy to deliver the lecture on Deep Connections, Why Peace Education's Time Has Come. Over to Mr. Jonathan Rudy.
Thank you, Dr. Williams, for that introduction. And greetings from Pennsylvania in the United States, where it's early morning and spring is just now poking out. So we're hopeful that we'll see the flowers blooming soon and do away with the very cold weather. So I want to thank Principal Dr. Jesper, the department head, Dr. Williams, Director Vertucci, and Vice President Dr. Y Ching Wong, Dr. Judea, Ma'am Gagento, faculty, students, and friends. Thank you for allowing me to present today. And I'm really grateful for having worked with United Board on this peace education program, the course that through the Mindanao Peace Building Institute that we completed very recently. My title today is Deep Connections, Why Peace Education's Time Has Come. Excuse me. This is the 10,000 meter view of peace education, why it matters, and I really want to affirm Women's Christian College, and particularly the Department of Advanced Zoology and Biotechnology for pulling this all together. I will share my screen now and we'll move forward. I assume you can see that now. So in order to start this idea of peace education from the Department of Zoology, what's that about? I'll let you know. I'll give you a spoiler alert here that it really makes a lot of sense. By the way, I'm going to turn on my my captioning here. One of the things we covered in peace education was universal design for learning, and I just discovered this, which I should have been using all along. For those of you who may have trouble understanding my English. So I want to tell you a story about my own undergraduate education way back in the 80s, decades ago. I attended a small Christian liberal arts college named Goshen College in Indiana in the United States. And it is a Christian college, and it used to have daily devotionals that students were required to be at. But as the times changed, they changed these to thrice weekly convocations that students were required to attend. Now, you can see that picture of me. I was a slightly younger man then, a little bit more of a rebel. And I confess to you that I did not pay much attention during convocation. As maybe some of you are students now, you have lots of things on your mind. I did as well. But I do remember one convocation, and I don't remember the content, but I remember the title. And the title was something like The Connectedness of All Things. And that, 4 decades later, has stuck with me in a way that very few things do in my memory. But I think this connectedness of all things began a lifelong pursuit of looking for and observing connections. I'm very grateful that Chris Bertucci has mentioned collaboration and community, and Dr. Y Ching Wong has also mentioned connectedness. I think this is a theme in peace education. And let me explain to you why this is so important in our times. We are facing on this planet, I think, in a way that every human is beginning to be aware of. We are facing what we call wicked problems. Now, these wicked problems, the definition of that is up there on the screen: a problem whose social complexity means that it has no determinable stopping point. Look at all of these around here. Climate collapse. When do we say we're done with climate change and climate collapse? When do we say we're done with inequality or extremism or war? Corruption, pandemic, population and migration. So these are all wicked problems here listed. Further, the definition includes, because of these complex problems, they have interdependencies, and the effort to solve one aspect of the problem reveals or creates other problems. Think about trying to solve war with war. Doesn't it create more war? Doesn't it create more violence and trauma that needs to be overcome? And so these wicked problems are what every human on the planet is A, impacted by to some degree, and B, is aware of in a way that we haven't as a human species before. So peace education sets about to begin to give the framework and the understanding of what a wicked problem is. These problems, there's no significant time deadline on finding solutions. There's no central authority that is charged with overcoming each of these problems. Addressing only one narrow part of these problems will not give us the solutions that we so desperately need. So I've been thinking about peace building as a broad term, and I'll use peace building now because that's the field that I have studied and been thinking about and been teaching in for the last couple of decades. And even beyond that, before I got into actual peace building education, I was doing development work, I was doing international relief work. And these awarenesses were percolating in my mind at that point. So I'm thinking about a progression here that the Alliance for Peace Building has helped to develop. And the first iteration of the term peace building, we'll call it peace building 1.0. For those of you in software development, this is familiar language, right? You label things 1.0 when you have a brand new version of something. So peace building 1.0 goes back to the 70s when Johan Galtung was kind of conceptualizing this. Uri and Fisher offered us the Getting to Yes book about negotiations. You can see that these key words that we're working with here: mediation, negotiation, consensus building. It's a skills-based understanding. And these concepts of conflict resolution, solving conflict, conflict migration are really central to this concept that and I'll paraphrase it, and it's probably an oversimplification, but these early concepts were, look, if we could all just learn mediation, if we could all just learn, negotiation, we could all get to yes, and conflicts would be solved, they would be overcome, they would be mitigated or resolved. This was a bit of a simplification because not everybody's going to learn mediation the same way, and not everybody has access to mediation, as my case study in just a bit will show you. So, and yet it was an important step. Peace building 2.0 then, and remember, these are not mutually exclusive, but these things keep building on each other, just like software iteration builds on the last copy, right? So peace building 2.0 begins to take into account the relationships. We start to use the word stakeholder in this. Who has a stake in the conflict as it exists now, both a negative and a positive stake in that? We began to look at how violence does trauma. And so we looked at trauma healing, and we looked at structure. We begin to peace building begins to consider the structural reality of conflict and violence. And it starts to look for root causes, and it begins to have the analysis tools that can take these all into account. We begin to develop cultures of peace because we recognize it's not only skills, it's not only individual relationships, but it's our relationship to our cultures and our structures. And so cultures of peace emerges during this period. And we look for terms like durable or sustainable peace, as we've looked for those terms in international development, for example. So key concepts that emerge are do no harm, conflict transformation, CDA collaborative learning projects is introducing this peace writ large. How does what we do contribute largely to the peace of our understanding? Now, but you see in the diagram there, peace building 2.0 says, okay, this is a way of being, but everybody has to come to understanding peace building, and so it still, peace building still places itself at the center, and this is a period where guys like me got into this as a quote unquote profession, and that's another story as to how I stumbled into this and continue this. But it's demanded some reinvention in terms of like peace education space, for example. So then we get to Peace Building 3.0, and I have to thank Alliance for Peace Building for conceptualizing this. Peace Building 3.0 is and 4.0, but I won't get into 4.0 because it's the latest iteration. But Peace Building 3.0 begins to understand peace in the context, like Christine Bertucci outlined, and Dr. Y Ching has mentioned, that peace building understands that it's an overlay, or it's a set of attitudes, it's a set of approaches to the wicked problems that we have. So now we understand that there are intersectionalities between the conflicts and the violence we have, and that in order to overcome those, we need to be networked. Well, again, that's the same thing as saying collaboration. It's the same thing as saying community. It's the same thing as saying connectedness. And we are looking for things like a higher consciousness, which I believe the human race is at that point now. The internet and has given us a sense, and our social media, for example, have given us a sense of connectedness that we never could have had before. Here am I, a white male sitting in North America, addressing you all in various parts of the world, in the Indian subcontinent and beyond. Wow, what a fantastic time we live in. But our understanding of peace building needs to keep up with this. And so we understand these broader concepts like human security, that everybody is on this quest for security. And so we are, and you can see the diagram there that peace building 3.0 kind of positions itself in various parts to add the value of peace. And this is how I might define peace education. How crazy is it that the Department of Zoology and Biotechnology is hosting this idea of bringing peace education into the academic world? Well, I think it is a brilliant move. And I'll tell you why. One of my favorite TED Talks, and of course, I have lots of favorite TED Talks, and I don't know if you have discovered these, faculty out there. If you are not using TED Talks, please explore the TED ecosphere, because you can find almost some inspiration on almost any topic that you're looking for. One of the most intriguing ones that I ran across recently was this guy named Tal Goldsworthy, who is a boiler process engineer. So this guy, is a pipe fitter basically, who designs, how do you run pipes through ships or through, engineering environments where you need to run high pressure or you need to run steam or fluids or, and here's this guy who develops a heart condition. And he says, well, gee, if I had this problem in one of my boilers or one of my pipe fitting, installations, this is what I would do. And he takes and applies that same principle to a cardiac fix for his own heart, his human heart. And he pulls together a multidisciplinary team to do that. Now, this is something, this TED Talk, as he elaborates on this is something he could not have done from a siloed perspective of just the heart mechanics, the cardiac doctors. So he pulls together a CAD engineer, a mechanical engineer, a medical devices engineer, cardiac surgeons, medical radiologist, cardiac morphologist, whatever that is, way beyond my pay grade here, and a catalyst chemist to come up with this innovative new heart procedure that basically saves his life. And here he is at his TED Talk, kind of going over this. So is it crazy for the Department of Zoology to look at peace education? Absolutely not. Because what the wicked problems that we are facing take multidisciplinary approaches, and why not begin it from there? That's the question I asked you. Not is it crazy, but why not begin it from the department that Dr. Judea, who was in the peace education class and the driver behind this whole webinar. Well, I want to tell you a quick story about my own working in a multidisciplinary environment that was a real wake up to me. About 10 years ago, I was teaching at Mindanao Peace Building Institute, and a friend of mine, a Filipino, had developed connections with the Philippine military and had sought permission and gained permission to do mediation training with paramilitary forces there. This was leading up to elections, and the reality, the context, was that these severely undertrained, well, I shouldn't say severely, but I mean undertrained paramilitary forces who were kind of at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of their access to resources in the Philippine military and training. They were being approached in their own communities about solving problems leading up to elections. and that they found themselves ill-equipped to use soft power to help conflicting parties to overcome their own, to seek peaceful solutions. They were trained in the use of hard power, which is, weapons and coercion and power over, but they had very little training in what to do when two feuding community members came to them fighting over a chicken or a well or access to grazing land or something like that. So my friend had gained access and training and invited me along. And so we arrived in the military camp after a colleague who actually worked in the camp had secured permission for me, an American citizen, to be one of the first civilians to be doing any training in the camp. We arrived there, and I immediately noticed the connection points that where I could use to kind of connect the mediation to the values that were being held by this particular military brigade. And you notice that the hall we trained in was called the Hall of Peace. It was outside, it was open air. And that on the roof of this building was splashed transform. Well, I've been working at conflict transformation and those concepts in a training venue for a long time. So automatically, here was a connection point. And it was incredibly important as we went through the training of these paramilitary to be able to access things that were important to them. As we taught them and allowed them to practice skills training. For me, as coming from a faith tradition, I had really shunned the idea of working with military. I often saw militaries and the use of hard power and weaponry and violence to overcome violence as completely antithetical to what my own value set. But crossing that boundary allowed me to become a little bit more intersectional in my approach to peace building. And I think in my own thinking, it was moving from peace building 2.0 to peace building 3.0. And this was my own education, right? This was peace education for my own self as an educator. Educators out there who are listening, or those of you wanting to be so, always remain a learner. It will help you to stay relevant, and particularly in this field of peace education, it's vitally important because the field is changing. Our conception of how we're all connected continues to expand. So there's a couple of things as we think about peace education coming from the Department of Advanced Zoology and Biotechnology. I want to say yes and yes, and show you a little bit about how these intersectionalities, maybe to stimulate your thinking, maybe you don't need this, but I'll offer this anyways. Take, for example, the wicked problem of climate change. How can departments get out of their own siloed kind of disciplines and work together for broader solutions for the greater common good? Think, for example, about energy autocracy, which is like if you want to impact the war in Ukraine, seek energy independence. Why? Because solar and wind are democratized energy. They're not centralized, they're dispersed. And so the power given to autocrats who control pipelines and electrical systems and gas and oil will have their power diminished by and so engineering departments can function impact this whole idea of climate change. Pollution, for example. I'm not sure about where you are in India right now, but I just see plastic pollution as an enormous problem, killing our oceans, poisoning us. They say that every one of us has plastic running through our veins because it's gotten into the micro and nanoplastics. And so perhaps the biological science can develop little enzymes to eat plastic and to help with that problem. How about policy dysfunction? You know, it's not that we don't have the science to move toward renewable energies and sustainable energies. It's that we don't have the political will in many places. And so the political science departments among us can work at policy innovation and come together. And, you know, lastly, economic scarcity seems to be, you know, it's our economic systems that have bred so much injustice and inequity. And so our economics departments can come up with new indicators. We already have some of these, like the Human Development Index, the Happiness Index, can help to shift these perceptions as to what really makes us wealthy. Now, if you notice, the energy autocracy, engineering would have a lot to say toward political science, right? And so here in our departments is ways in which we can connect across disciplines. So one more about for migration, for example. Its manifestation would be food insecurity, for example. And if you have ag sciences, they can help with that. How about, you know, climate change is connected, right? That was the previous slide. So climate change is a definite driver of migration. And of course, this is how we connect all the other departments. How about war? Big driver of migration. And poli-sci can help with that. Economic insecurity, social enterprise can work with that. Domestic violence is a driver of migration as well. And so sociology, so social work. Each one of these departments is able, would have the option to talk to other departments about having multidisciplinary responses. So peace education at Women's Christian College, I think you're going to put WCC on the map here by your approach. I thank Dr. Judea for her energy in putting this together. I think if you can continue to support her, Women's Christian College will be a bright light in the whole field of peace education. Thank you. I'll call it quits there. And I think there may be some time to have some discussion in a little bit. So back to the host.
Thank you, Dr. Jonathan. That was a very enlightening talk. And thank you for helping us understand how, as departments, we can contribute to building peace education. And thank you very much for all the examples that you gave. Thank you very much. I now request Dr. Christina, Department of Advanced Zoology and Biotechnology, to introduce the next speaker for today.
Thank you, Dr. Evangeline. Good evening, a warm welcome to all of you for this session of awareness towards peace education. A well-known excerpt from the Beatitudes of the Holy Bible claims, "Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God." So relevant in these perilous times, where peace is all we seek for. In this context, I take immense pleasure in introducing the speaker for this session, Maria Aragiganto. Maria Aragiganto is a co-facilitator of Mindano Peace Building Institute, Philippines, from its inception in the year 2000. Besides serving as a co-facilitator of Mindano Peace Building Institute, she has served as the training officer at the Grassroots Training Center, where she had trained administrators, educators, and leaders on Peace Education and was also the co-member of International Facilitator on Human Security. Her fascination for peace education and commitment to it led her to be the director of Notre Dame University's Peace Education Center, where she educated undergraduate and graduate students on peace education. She also served as a coordinator for Justice and Peace Ministry at the Archdiocese of Cotabato. Her courage to restore peace among the East Timorese during the pre- and post-independence from Indonesia was highly commendable. Thus, her unflinching determination for the promotion of peace, education in various arenas made her a recipient of Tannenbaum Peacemaker in Action Award 2015. This conviction of hers towards peace education arose as a trait from her academic credentials on peace education. Maria Aragiganto obtained her bachelor's in medical technology and master's in peace education. Further, she attended several certificate courses on peace education offered by various universities across the globe. To list, certificate program from Eastern Mennonite University, Virginia, USA, Mary Knoll School of Peace Building, New York, USA, Mindanao Peace Building Institute, Philippines, Notre Dame University, USA. We are happy to have you in our midst, ma'am. Requesting you to take over the session.
Thank you. Can you see me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Christina, for that extensive introduction. May I request someone to please flash my slide? I think I sent my slides earlier. If not, I'll do this. Ma'am?
If you can give us a couple of minutes, we'll project your slide.
Thank you. And while waiting, may I just correct a little thing about what was shared? I was director of Notre Dame University Peace Center in the Philippines and not in Indiana, USA. Same name, University of Notre Dame and Notre Dame University. So I was director of the Notre Dame University Peace Center in Cotabato City, Philippines. Not in Indiana, it's not in University of Notre Dame.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for correcting, ma'am. Thank you.
So while waiting, I would like to thank Dr. Lillian Jasper and Dr. Angela Y Ching and Dr. Vanita Williams for the very beautiful way of introducing our activity today. Thank you. Can I start with the first screen? So this is the facade of our university, and if you can see, I have retired from work from Catholic Relief Services, my former organization. But this was the university where I was teaching peace education, and when I became its Peace Education Center director. As you can see, the vision mission statement is actually written on the wall of the university. Can we enlarge the slide, please? Oh, that's it. Okay, let's go to the next slide. So in the next slide, it contains my philosophy of education. And it says, can we go to the next slide, please? Education is for all. And of course, peace education is for all. No one should be excluded from peace education. As we listened to my colleague John say, everyone has to have access to peace education. Can we go to the third slide, please? Can we go
Ma'am,
to the...
1 minute. This, yeah, it's not moving.
Oh, okay.
1 minute.
Sorry. Can I wait?
One minute, ma'am. 1 minute.
Yes. Yeah. I'm trying to access also from my laptop in case I need to. Yes, thank you. Can we go to the third slide, please? Yes. So just a little bit of background for the school where I used to work, Notre Dame University. In 1987, Dr. Toswi Hin, and he's a very well-known professor in the field of peace education, and a colleague, Professor Virginia Kawagas, they were invited to teach peace education at Notre Dame University. Some 40 teachers actually enrolled. Later, they were reduced to 20, then 10, then 4, persevered. And I really asked, what was the problem? And they said they really couldn't handle the bulk of readings that Dr. Toswihin was asking them to do. And they were all full-time teachers. So you would understand that, aside from being full-time teachers, they have to do all these readings, so they couldn't cope with it. So they gave up. Very key to the starting of the peace education at Notre Dame University is a person, Dr. Ofelia Durante. She was a teacher, and she was so much, uh, she got so involved with peace education. And when she became the vice president for academic affairs, she worked hard for the inclusion of peace education as a mandatory course for all students in the tertiary level. So the university had a tertiary and an elementary level. Now it has a secondary level. But in the past, it was just the primary and the tertiary level. So it was because of Dr. Ofelia Durante that really peace education was adopted by the school as a core course. And then further, they established the Peace Education Center to manage teachers development, peace education orientation for all, and outreach activities by students and faculties. The Oblate Fathers, who owned the university, highlighted peace education in the vision mission goal of the school, as it was, as you can see in that written in the facade of the school. The topics were taught from a book, but teachers learned how to emphasize teaching respect for differences, responding non-violently to conflict through dialogue, developing a sense of solidarity. The location of the school, it is within the heart of Cotabato City, and Cotabato City is within the region of Maguindanao and Central Mindanao, where there was at that time really a conflict between rebels, the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, and the government of the Republic of the Philippines. It was in the center of within this region, and so the teachers felt that really they have to emphasize teaching of respect for differences between Muslims, Christians, and the indigenous people, and how to respond non-violently to conflict brought about by inter-ethnic and inter-religious differences, and how to use dialogue for that. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So we actually had a program of teaching and practicing peace in campus, which is serving the university community. So we offered 3 units of peace education for all students of the tertiary level. We had the 6 petals or the 6 pathways to peace. If you are familiar with Dr. Toswihin, that's like the main point of his pathways. We offered a master's and doctoral degree in peace and development studies, and we had yearly updating of peace education teachers. Very important because context develops, and there would there would be many issues that would come out. So we really had to have a yearly updating, or even like per semester updating of our peace education teachers. We held peace orientation or orientation for new and old teachers, administrators, the non-teaching personnel at the start of every school year for newcomers. NDU, Notre Dame University, being a private and Catholic university, Eduyog Ramadan, or accompanying the Muslims or joining the Muslims during the season of Ramadan program was adopted, and prayer rooms for Muslims were identified. In the past, there's a beautiful chapel in the center of the campus. No prayer room for Muslims. But after the peace education was implemented, then prayer rooms were actually identified for Muslims. The using of hijab, the head covering in school, as a choice by female Muslim students were supported. Peer mediation for tertiary and elementary or primary students was started. Peer mediation, they themselves manage their own conflict, and they have a core of mediators who help them resolve their conflict. Graduating students at the time, their theses were made to address the needs of adopted communities. So they would adopt a community, usually a very, very poor community, and they would design their thesis around this, and then go back after they have defended it, and they go back to the community and present their finished product. Outreach programs serve the communities around the university. So each college, they had different programs. Like, for example, for the College of Nursing, they go actually on, in the communities, and they offer infrastructures. The engineering students, they would actually visit poor communities, and they will help build infrastructures, simple infrastructures like footbridges. They actually, I think they were also testing waters for potability. So that's what they were doing. They were, for those who are under the College of Commerce, they actually taught accounting and marketing orientation for those housewives who have small stores, or they sell vegetables and fruits, or they have small stores that sell coffee, sachets of coffee, candies, etc. So the the College of Commerce students would teach them basic accounting and marketing. And those from the College of Education or the Teachers College, they taught literacy and numeracy to kids as well as to adults. So these were the things that we were doing to serve our university community. Next slide, please. But we also had teaching and practicing peace off campus, which is serving the community around the university. So there were scholarships in the Peace and Development Master's Program offered to different sectors in collaboration with the United Nations Development Program, or UNDP, and with IAG, which is a Cotabato-based NGO, the Institute for Autonomous and Governance. Peace education for public and private schools within the region and beyond were conducted. The university is a member of the Catholic Educational Association of Private Schools, but also a member of the Notre Dame Educational Association. And so core teachers from and core students from Notre Dame University went out and conducted peace education orientation to these schools. Culture of peace workshops for the local government units, the military, the civil society organizations, informal groups like out of school youth, village women, journalists, and even non-state actors, or whom we term rebels. These were also conducted. The school collaborated with Act for Peace. It's a local program under UNDP in the creation of 60 peace schools. So I would like to backtrack a little that the Philippines has an office of the Presidential Advisor on the peace process, and one of the programs of the OPAP is actually education for peace. And this was picked up in 2006. And in 2006, where the peace education program was given emphasis. In just recently in 2021, there was an executive order. There was a Commission on Higher Education order that mandated or just came out with the guidelines. You know, there is a law and then you have the implementing guidelines. So they just came up with an implementing guidelines that was already an executive order in 2006. So they only came up with the guidelines on implementation in 2021, that on how to actually conduct or how to implement peace education in all tertiary level or tertiary level. So so in one of the programs that we had under the Peace Education Center was actually to help UNDP create 60 peace schools. So you accompany them from the orientation of the teachers to teachers formation, to orientation with administrators, to orientation of the Parents Teachers Association, until they become really oriented as a peace school, and then they declare themselves as schools of peace. So that's the process that was used. We coordinated with other institutions, with civil society and government institutions in having peace programs. The end goal is to lobby for the government to adopt peace education for all schools in the Philippines, and this was very successful. Work with civil society in drafting the civil society agenda for the inclusion in the signed agreement between the government and the Moro National Liberation Front. Remember, I was sharing with you that there's a revolution that's going on around us, and the first group that signed a peace agreement with the government in 1992 was the Moro National Liberation Front. And we in the Peace Center helped draft the CSO agenda for the inclusion in that peace agreement. But again, there's another faction that broke away from the Moro National Liberation Front, and this was the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. They wanted a venue to talk, and they requested the university if they can talk peace. They start to talk about peace. This was initially their first chance to meet each other face to face. They wanted us to host it. After so much deliberation, we said, yes, we will serve the outside community by hosting them in the university. So that's part of our work outside the university community. Next, please. Next, please. What are the challenges of having peace education and a peace education center? Peace educators were expected, next slide, please. Peace educators were expected to walk the talk. We all know that when you talk about peace, when you are a graduate of peace, of a master's degree in peace education, or a PhD in peace studies, people expect you to be very, very peaceful to the extent that you cannot get angry. And anger is a valid expression of your emotion, but they expect you not. No, you're a peace person. You shouldn't do that. So, peace educators were expected to walk their talk in school, out of school, in the home, in the neighborhood. Next slide, please. The second challenge is having a peace education program and a peace center created great expectations in the community because you were expected to be. So they would say, why do you need armed guards at the gate? Of course, we had to need armed guards at the gate because some people would come in with with armed guards, and we have to stop them at the gate. And so at the time, why is my math teacher unkind? And this, they have been oriented in peace ed. Or sometimes we receive feedback from, the restaurants around, in front of the university. Why are your students unruly in my restaurant? So that's one of the challenges of having a peace education program and a peace education center. The third challenge actually is addressing the balance between teaching peace in school and running peace education or culture of peace workshops outside the school. We all our except maybe for 3 or 4, all other peace educators were actually full-time teachers of other subjects. So, and also, if we only had 3 or 4 full-time peace educators at that time, peace education teachers at the time, they were having like 5, 7 classes, in a day. So how would you actually respond to the needs outside of the school while you are having a full-time demand also of students in school? So we had to find a balance because at that time there was only the school, the Notre Dame University teachers who could actually respond to the needs outside. And that's why we were saying we have to multiply ourselves. We have to multiply ourselves. There's so much need outside also. We have to multiply ourselves. So we really had to live up to that challenge. Another challenge is some administrators expected no more student actions. So when we declare tuition increase, the students should not hold a strike. But I told them, you know, with look at the conduct of the strikes of our students. They don't call you names. They are very peaceful. They don't throw stones. They just want to really air out what they feel about, the tuition fee hike. Why not? Don't you have to allow them to do that? It's their way of getting off energy. But they said no. So it was really just negotiating with administrators to understand holding a strike, holding, it's a dialogue actually actually an invitation for a dialogue between those who are striking and those who are in the administrators, and just, it's the way of the young people to let off steam. It's one of the non-violent expression of peace. So it's not really uh, because our students already know how to do it in a way that's really also respectful of the rights of the administrators. And last, it's actually prioritizing the response to the demands and advocating for a new mindset. I think John also has mentioned this. The questions they often ask is why engage the military and rebels in the culture of peace workshops? They are not part of the peace environment. They are for war and revolution. At the time, we were saying it's not going to work if we don't engage them also. They have to understand also if they want to learn about peace, we should respond to their need. We are not an exclusive thing as just because we've studied and learned peace, it's just us. No, if they want to learn about it, we will also have to engage them on it. So that was one of the major challenges. Next, please. What happened next? Because it is a privately owned school and the environment changes, the priority can shift. The change in the presidency of the school resulted in the change in the university's priority. So the Peace Education Center was closed and integrated into the Ministry of Formation. Peace education as a subject was integrated into subjects like the Masenod 1 and 2. Peace and Development Master's Program remained. So it was just the Peace and Development Master programs that really stood out as a program of peace by the school, but all the others were integrated under the Ministry of Formation. But now I think it's back at Notre Dame University because of that uh, Commission on Higher Education Memorandum Number 42, which was the guidelines for implementation of peace education in the tertiary level. Next slide, please. There are a number of peace. What happened next? There are a number of peace centers now in state-owned universities. Most were started by graduates of the Masters in Peace and Development Studies. So, the product, that's something that makes you proud when they would say, oh, the Peace Center in this university was started by your student at MPDS. And so it's really heartwarming for us also. So even if the Peace Center in Notre Dame University was integrated into the Ministry of Formation, still it gave birth to other peace centers all around us also. And again, what happened next? There is a newly created region in Mindanao called the Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. It is a result of the peace talks between the government of the Republic of the Philippines and the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. I think it was signed 3 or 4 years ago. Most of the staff and many of the commissioners actually are graduates of Notre Dame University, and they went through peace education and they still remember their peace education subjects. So if you listen to their speeches, you actually would know, yeah, this is my peace, this is my peace ed student of years back. Lessons learned. Next slide, please. For peace education to prosper in one's school environment, everyone has to buy in. Administrators, teachers. So I'm really happy to see Principal Jasper. You know, your support will be very, 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 very valuable. Buy-in from administrators, teachers, students, non-teaching personnel like janitors, secretaries, laboratory assistants, guards around the premises, even parents, especially in the primary level. So it has to be, everyone has to have a buy-in or a stake. Second, lesson learned. Peace education goes beyond the school fences or the premises. The community around the university is host to the university. A peace education program, as also a program in other colleges, should include and benefit the host community. Number 3, peace education should be made accessible to those who would want it. It is not a subject that is exclusively for a certain sector of society, only for like-minded people like us. No, it is for everyone who wants to learn about peace. But again, as peace educators, and this is my experience, we should guard against peace education being abused by others to get what they want from other sectors. And I remember I was invited, one of my one of my peace education, one of my peace building graduates was actually presenting uh, a set of slides, and I was shocked when I saw my set of slides being presented, but presented in a different way. And it was actually presented as, so if you want to be a peace person, then you should not create tension. You should actually accept, especially if especially if the person who is speaking is a leader. I was like, ah, where did you get that? That's not part of being peaceful. You should speak when there is injustice. If you don't like what is being said, you can actually express your discomfort. You know, you shouldn't just take it just because the one who's saying it is a leader, and you should help, because it would actually invite abuse, and it would create yes society, a silent society. So I really had a private talk with a person who was presenting the slide, and I said, I didn't teach it the way you presented it. So we have to guard against that. And lastly, as a closing statement, next slide, please. There is an African proverb that says, it takes a village to educate a child. But we are saying, it takes all efforts by every member of society to build a peaceful community. And peace education for all is a good start. I would like to thank Dr. Judea for starting this international webinar. You know, as Barry Manilow sings, one voice singing in the darkness. All it takes is one voice. So this is the voice actually of Dr. Judea. And thank you for starting that one voice within your College of Advanced Zoology. And now, if I may look at the number of participants, you have actually touched 150 voices. Daghang salamat. Good night.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so very much for the very interesting talk. And thank you for telling us how to incorporate peace education in academia. And we understand how important it is, especially in a country like ours, where we're very culturally diverse, where our classrooms are diverse when it comes to religion and culture. And we have a very cosmopolitan crowd. And thank you so very much for helping us understand how we need to incorporate this in our education, in the education that we offer, and how we need to practice peace on campus and off campus, and all the challenges that we might face along the way. Thank you so very much. Thank you for your encouraging words as well. Thank you very much, ma'am. We would now open the session up for questions. We'd now like to have a question and answer session. So students and attendees, if there's any of you who have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask the question to the speakers, to both of the speakers who delivered lectures today, or you can post your questions in the chat box. So students, attendees, if there's anybody who has a question, please ask your question, or you can post your question in the chat box. Sir, we have a question. I will read out the question for you. There has always been a lot of awareness on peace, but there is very little actual implementation of the theoretical practices in real life. Why do you think that is the case?
That's a very good question. I think it is probably the question, because everybody says, peace, peace, we want peace. Why isn't there more peace? And it's a complex answer. Maybe part of that is that we don't actually believe that nonviolence is a force more powerful than violence. Like somewhere in our formula is the bottom line is, okay, if peace doesn't work, then we'll use violence. But we have to purge that inclination out of our thinking. And we have to do so at a political level, at a social level, at a cultural level, at a relational level. And if you develop, one of the things we do in peace education is work at our theories of change. How is it that we think things change? And you know, when you're facing an injustice, when you're facing violence, how is it that we think we will overcome that? And again, if in that formula of our theory of change is violence or coercion or power over, then I think you will find the answer to the very question. I don't know, Dang, what do you think?
I remember when I was still with the Justice and Peace Commission of the Archdiocese, I was invited to do an orientation for justice and peace workers. And after the orientation, a priest came to me and said, you know, we've been doing justice, fighting justice all these years. We do not know how to build peace. We do not know how to build peace. And that really struck with me. And why? Because that was only the time that they found out that peace is really hard work on ourselves. Peace is really hard work on ourselves. It's easier to, as we say, it's easier to start a war. It's easier to start something very violent, but it's so difficult to build peace. People had the notion that peace is all, up there, waving your hand, just don't rock the boat, that's peace. But no, it's really hard work on your part. As John was saying, we're so used to responding in violence. That was like that's just like an automatic thing. When you slap back. It's so difficult to learn how to respond non-violently, how to respond in a peaceful way. And I think that's why we have all these theories in our head. But then when we start to do it, when we start to practice it, we find it's difficult. Then we actually tend to slide back into the what we are used to, what we were taught in our childhood to do. So we have to actually surmount that, I think, for us to say there is a different way of responding, not like this, not like this. If we want to start a peaceful world, we have to learn how to do it. And that's, I think, why when we design peace education programs, we actually have to accompany that with a practicum, with a practice, so that people are not just full of all these theories and there's no way of helping them. What tools do we have to really be peaceful, to implement, to practice our theories? What tools do we have? I think that's where there might be a gap. What do you think? Did that answer the question? The one who asked the question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am, for that perspective. Yes, it is definitely hard work to maintain and implement peace. We have another question, ma'am. We have sought, would it be possible to include peace education as a compulsory subject in schools and colleges, similar to environmental studies? If yes, how long would it take? And to what extent will it help the students?
I think those of you in your administrators could actually respond to this. Because for us, it was really the work of the Vice President for Academic Affairs who pushed for this. And then the owner of the school incorporated it into their vision, mission, and goal, which was the anchor that we needed to really implement full blast, incomplete the peace education program of the school.
Thank you.
And it's like a 3-unit, so it's 1 hour per week. Yeah, that's it.
One more question. Creating an awareness amongst the younger generation does create a better impact, but there is conflicting traditional caste and creed beliefs incorporated into younger generations in India. And these contradictory beliefs result in low impact throughout India. How can this be prevented?
I think that's the structural and cultural elements that we've been talking about. You know, as we complexify this concept of peace, too many people have a very simplistic notion of peace, how to do it, how to implement it, and this is where focusing on intersectionalities helps us to understand that these questions you're asking are critical questions, and yet they presuppose some very simplistic answers. For example, there is this question, I think the last question there, learning about peace, education, will it actually change the mindset of people? Is it really that we're changing minds, or are we changing hearts? And herein lies your theory of change. Does the change begin in individual hearts? Is it, and if your answer is a binary answer, yes or no, then again, you're asking the wrong question. Because we've been talking about intersectionalities here, it is both and. Yes, human hearts and structures. It's not one or the other. And again, here is where the intersectionality of working toward this is important. For example, the recent brain research that is coming out of neurosciences or wherever, whoever's studying this stuff, has given tremendous insights into how trauma results from violence and how it keeps people doing the very same things, even though they don't want to do that, right? They slip back into those very base kind of reactions that Deng suggested, you know, you hit me, I'll hit you back. And it is only in nonviolent practice, which comes out of the interior and out of the heart, that we can begin to get control of these impulses that we might have, that many of which are based on survival. They're based on traumatic pre-trauma. How does that all shape policy, for example? How does that all shape policy that dictates structure, that dictates and then has its reflection back in culture? These are the questions to ask. I really appreciate these really tough questions, and they have very complex answers that you as students may want to spend your life studying in peace education, in peace, in the field of peace building. Dang.
I was just thinking about this new thing that was recently signed by the commissioners in the Barm area. You know, Muslims have this tradition or custom of marrying young girls off, and it is allowed for them. But then, you know, people have been saying, some sectors have been advocating for, child marriages should not be allowed. Please do not marry off your children. They're still young. Allow them to develop fully first before. And just recently, actually, there was a law that was passed by the commissioners in the BARM, saying that marrying off young girls is disallowed. It created a huge, you know, huge thing with the BARM, but the women commissioners were very firm about it, and they received some support from the men commissioners, and so it actually like changed the whole, like, the what is it the marriage thing among the Muslims in Mindanao. What I'm saying is that yes, there might be traditions and beliefs that might contradict what we teach in peace education, especially when we teach of human rights, when we teach of respecting differences, when we teach of advocating for that education is for all and not only for the privileged few. It might contradict the social norms of and the traditions of some of the peoples. But then, change is really difficult. It is difficult. But when we really fully understand what we are teaching and what we are advocating, and there are many of us, or we form a group of support for each other in pushing for these reforms, in pushing for what we really want as change to happen, then little by little it will happen. And that's what our experience in Mindanao was. We thought we would never see peace. We thought we will, I grew up in conflict and I thought I'm dying in conflict situation. I never even realized I would see peace. But persistence in really pushing for peace and talking unceasingly. Sometimes you give up, then you come back, but really pushing for it and working for it, then change can happen. That's my experience also here. And sometimes people would say, peace education seminar, it's just a seminar. How can it create something, impact change? It's just peace education. How can it impact change? Believe me, we do impact change. Never underestimate the seed that you actually plant in people's minds. One day it's going to take roots and it's going to grow.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. I liked how you ended it. We should never forget the seeds we plant. Thank you, sir, very much. And I think we have finished all the questions that we've got. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am, for taking the time to answer all the questions we had. We will now have a group photo session. I request all the participants, the delegates, all the attendees, all of you to switch on your video camera so we can take a group picture. I request all of you to switch on your videos.
Dr. Christina and Dr. Vinoda, yeah, can you please do the group snap?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You'll see quite a few of your videos switched off. I would like your cooperation in this. Please switch on your videos. Yes, thank you very much. We're going to take a picture on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. All right, thank you. Please stay there. We'll take one more. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so those of you who whose videos are switched off, you can go ahead and switch it on yourself. We have not unmuted or stopped your videos. So please switch it on. All right, some of you have switched it on now. We'll take last picture. Yes. Okay, we'll take it on the count of 3 again. 1, 2, 3. Thank you. Thank you very much for your cooperation. Thank you. And that brings us to the end of today's session. And we hope that you found this session engaging and fruitful. And I hope this reached out to you. And I hope that we learned something from this we weren't already aware of. And thank you for your active participation. And I hope all of you will join on time for tomorrow's session as well. And I promise you that tomorrow's session will be just as engaging as today's session. And I would like to place on record a special thanks to all the speakers, to all the dignitaries and delegates who took time out of your very busy schedule to be here with us and to help us understand how to navigate this whole process of peace education, especially in the field of academia. I would like to once again place my thanks on record, and thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much, ma'am. I thank all the participants for actively engaging, asking questions, and making this a very successful session. Please be on time for tomorrow's session as well. I hope you all have a lovely day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, the participants can leave. The dignitaries and staff members of AZBT, please just stay back for 5 minutes. Yeah, the participants.